Right now, I want to welcome to the program Congressman Paul Gosar from Arizona. And Congressman, good evening, sir. Thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me, Cam.
Listen, right as we were going on the air here, saw the story from the Daily Caller that you were pushing for a vote in the House of Representatives, sort of a vote of confidence as to whether or not Eric Holder should remain on the job. What can you tell us about this?
Well, one of the things is obvious. You know, when we saw the last dump of documents last week, now we've seen the cover-up, we've seen the lies. This is not any way that our chief for the law enforcement, for the DOJ, should be responding or acting. And this is going to get worse. And I think what we have to do is, cut to the chase, get this done with so that we can get to the bottom of this and make sure that we prohibit this from happening again.
You say that really there are two motivations here, not only to get that vote on the floor of the House, but also to raise awareness about Fast and Furious. I was stunned to read in the Daily Caller today that there were a couple of members of Congress who hadn't heard they hadn't heard about Fast and Furious until it was brought to their attention this week.
Well, they must have had their head in the sand because it's great radio stations like this, Cam, and your radio station, and things back home, and Fox News that have kept this in the limelight. And I find it very fascinating that's what kind of ways we have to go just to get it out there. Because when people find out about it, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, or Independents, they're appalled when they find out what was actually invented, so to speak, in this Fast and Furious.
Absolutely. So do you think we're going to get any straight answers tomorrow from the Attorney General?
I don't. But I do think that he's going to get some real tough questioning from members on that committee. And then just remember, Cam, next week we have, in government oversight in the House, we have Mr. Burke coming back.
Dennis Burke, the former U.S. attorney in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yes.
Now, I'm guessing, Congressman, you've got some really interesting questions for Dennis Burke, given some of the documents that were recently turned over by the Justice Department, including one email very early on where Dennis Burke is blaming the congressional investigation into Fast and Furious in the very early days on the gun lobby, accusing Congress and the investigators of being tools of the gun lobby, looking into Fast and Furious and insisting that there was absolutely nothing wrong about what had occurred in Fast and Furious.
Well, you're exactly right, and I think the other one, Cam, is going to be the issue of what we did to the whistleblower in leaking information about that whistleblower. But it also tells us that, with all those documents, now we're going back, and I think the chairman is doing such a great job, is going back to the earlier witnesses to go back and ask them further questions based off the new information. And when you look at that and you see this, you now know that there was a higher mark that came with this that gave its blessings on this thing. And that's why we need to get to the bottom of this. And what we need to do is make sure that those people are held accountable and we don't see it happen again.
One of the there have been a couple of interesting stories that have come out today. Again, Senator Grassley calling for Lanny Brewer to be fired or step down immediately. Cheryl Atkinson from CBS also reported on some emails where there were ATF officials who were looking at using anecdotes from Operation Fast and Furious as a means to push for new gun control schemes, specifically a scheme that the Obama administration has tried to put in place via regulation requiring FFLs in California, New Mexico, Texas, and your state of Arizona to report to the ATF anytime somebody buys more than 2 rifles greater than .22 caliber within a 5-day period. This is the emails themselves, as I understand it, Representative, aren't exactly new information. I recall seeing these emails a few months ago, but what's interesting is that the Justice Department and ATF, they don't want to talk about these emails. They wouldn't comment about what these emails might mean when Cheryl Atkinson was asking them questions today.
Well, you're exactly right. And then you even heard right from Mr. Holder's own mouth. A week ago when he was in front of the Senate Judiciary, he said, if I'm not mistaken, that if we had tougher gun laws, this would have never happened. and how further from the truth is that. So when you look at this whole scenario, and I'm big about timelines, and that's why I always go back to the early 2009 when Mr. Holder was in Mexico City talking about a new protocol with gun running, and then he's working with Secretary Napolitano. And then a week later, the president also condones supporting this aggressive campaign with Mr. Holder. And then misquotes that 90% of the weapons in this country go towards that are used in Mexico come from this country. He actually puts out those facts to condone these actions. Now, you'll find that we're going to see a lot more of this, if I'm not mistaken, coming forward, incriminating much higher ups.
Really?
I can tell you right now, you look at this, our Attorney General, and look what he's been saying, and look at the fire that's going on here. There's only one of two things, Cam, and we've talked about this before, is that if you knew about it, you got to go. Yeah. And if you didn't know about it, you had incompetence going on here.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and I got to say, I mean, the incompetence that is suggested by this administration, if that really is their excuse, it's staggering. I mean, you've got Lanny Breuer saying, for instance, no, I never looked at this email that went back and forth as we were trying to figure out how to respond to Senator Grassley. I don't recall looking at that. I was in Mexico. I was busy doing other things. He got 4 copies. He forwarded them onto his email account. Exactly. He wrote back and he said, "Great job as always," but he doesn't recall. The biggest scandal to occur within the Department of Justice in the entire first administration of the first term of the Obama administration. He doesn't recall this.
Well, and that's why the American public find it disheartening that we have bureaucrats expecting to be above the law. That's why it pains me to see our Justice Department, our head law enforcement person, covering this stuff up instead of coming outright, making sure they get to the bottom of this. And let's not forget that the earlier reports this week out of the, I believe out of the Washington Post or the New York paper that talked about money laundering. Oh my God! If there's more of this going on, that not only did we put guns in criminals' hands, but also facilitated buying anything else. Oh my! This is just a travesty on justice.
Well, I mean, I have to say, I the only thing I know about the money walking, or the money laundering that was allegedly done was what the New York Times reported on. But it certainly sounds like this administration is doing I mean, I hate to say it, Congressman, but it seems like this administration is doing a lot to help out the cartels under the guise of law enforcement and trying to take them down.
Well, and then we did this in understanding that. In the Bush administration, we had Operation Wide Receiver. There was another failure working with Mexico with surveillance and tracking, and we were going to expect something different with no tracking and no surveillance and not telling Mexico. Most people with some common sense just don't figure that one out.
Yeah. Well, listen, Congressman, I am looking forward to hearing Mr. Burke testify before your committee. You say that's next week. What day next week?
That I don't know, Cam. Today's been a busy day. We had a wonderful special orders with the Navajo Code Talkers today on Pearl Harbor, the anniversary. So
wow.
We just don't have them on the schedule, so I was just trying to get through today.
All right. Well, listen, Congressman, I'm glad you could be with us on the program. Thank you again, sir, and look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Thanks again, Cam, and thanks for keeping this in the forefront.
As always, Representative Paul Gosar joining us from Arizona tonight.